What's up, everyone? It's Casey, and I'm back with another video for you. I'm so pumped to talk about what I'm going to talk about today because I am a massive movie lover, like huge. I didn't really realize how important film was to me till I started calling it film, not movies. No, but for real, I didn't realize how important movies were to me until maybe the past 5 years or something like that. But it really started to become clear to me at a certain point that not only did I love just watching movies for leisure, but movies really inspired everything that I wanted to do musically, and that I really want to someday work in film, at least in some capacity. I'd love to create and direct some kind of short film album kind of thing. That's probably a long ways away, but either way, just like with music, I could go on for literal days just talking about the movies that I love, just like albums. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I have compiled a list. I'll try to refrain from saying this multiple times in the video because it's annoying, but this was very difficult to come up with and a difficult thing to condense. And I know a lot of you are probably in a similar boat. Just like with music, it's like, what's your favorite song? It's just so hard. And if you're someone that's constantly finding new stuff, watching new stuff, listening to new stuff, this is just a list that continues to change and evolve over time, which is awesome. It just means that you love creative stuff and you love art, and that's great. But it can make it very difficult to compile a list like this of your favorite stuff because it's bound to change. So anyway, I'm sure I will be ranting enough as is on every single movie that I'm going to be talking about today. So without further ado, why don't we get into this list? I'm going to start with the top 10 movies that are my favorites, and then I'm going to also list some honorable mentions that I really kind of can't go without mentioning, but I can't necessarily categorize them into a top 10. So the list in all, I think, is 25. 25 movies. I'll only be really talking in depth about the top 10. These also are not in any particular order. I genuinely can't even really think of comparing these top 10 because they're so different. And some of these movies also might not be movies that I think artistically now I connect with the most or are the most impressive, say, but they're movies that had a huge impact on me growing up or at different points in my life, so they've remained movies that I like to rewatch for comfort or to reinstill some kind of lesson in myself that I feel I learned from them. So without further ado, the first one is Yellow Submarine, which I'm sure is no surprise to most of you. The Beatles have been hugely impactful for me in my life and the lives of many, especially musicians. And Yellow Submarine was the first movie that my dad showed me that really was anything related to the Beatles at all. And I think it was a brilliant introduction because I was so mesmerized at a young age by these psychedelic, incredible drawings. It truly is an animated movie that was very ahead of its time. This movie came out in 1968. The sound design is crazy. It's very janky as far as the audio goes. The style, obviously, is totally influenced by the 60s and the 70s that were, quickly approaching, but it feels like something you could watch or that you would see animated, honestly, today. And I think it ages just incredibly well. I remember when I was a kid, after my dad showed me this movie and I became obsessed with the Beatles, this is my first ever, musical artist to be obsessed with, I tried to show this movie to the kids at my daycare one summer because I thought everyone would love it just the same way I did. And unfortunately, I was met with hate. Everybody hated it and nobody sat through the whole movie, and I was very sad. But I think my love for it as an adult has only grown stronger, and as I've aged, I've also realized that this is a little bit more of an adult movie than it is for kids. Pretty much everything about this movie has influenced me, and I feel like continues to influence me to date with all the things that I love, whether it's art styles, tattoos, music. I mean, there's so much on this album that just felt so ahead of its time, even if the Beatles did churn out a ton of music and some of it really was not good. I'll be the first to say that. Anyway, so there's honestly a lot that that I could say about this movie, but realistically, I was just so captivated by everything going on screen when I saw it as a kid. Every single creature design, every single bit of mixed media that was thrown in here. Now as an adult, I can recognize why this movie was so incredible. I have showed this to people that have never seen it as an adult, and most are usually very surprised by how much they actually like it. It feels really well crafted, and that so much care went into this, and the animators, the whole team, really were just putting their best foot forward in every single frame, honestly. So let's move on. The next one that I'm going to talk about is Amelie. So Amelie is like a romance drama from 2001 by, I will probably butcher his name, but the French director Jean-Pierre Jeunet. This movie is incredibly dreamlike. It's very surreal and super beautiful. For most of these movies, I guess this can be said, but one of the things that really lifts this movie up is the score. It would not be the same movie without the incredible score by Jan Tiersen that accompanies it. Not only is this movie kind of about like a hopeless romantic, which I am as well, but it has really beautiful lessons within it. It moves at a very fast pace. This movie kind of has the same energy as a lot of Wes Anderson movies, if that's a director that you really like. In some ways, it feels like a slice of life movie, but in other ways, it feels very philosophical and existential. The dialogue is really poetic and at times kind of abstract and hard to follow. But again, the romance of it all really just drives this movie and makes it such an interesting experience. Whenever I maybe am going through a breakup, or I have a crush on somebody, or I'm, working on loving myself, this is one of those movies that I come back to because it is romantic in its view of life in general. That is actually a theme of quite a few movies that are on my list, so you can tell the kind of movies that I like to watch or rewatch over and over again just to kind of reinvigorate my joy in living. I think this movie does an incredible job of that. It has a really comedic tone, even though a lot of what we're seeing can be very dark at times. I love dark comedy, and I love especially that in this movie, it's pretty intrinsically connected to this main character that you are watching. She's incredibly mysterious. She's that it girl. She is doing all of these really weird things just throughout this whole movie, just kind of to experiment, and just almost, it seems, because she has the free will to do it. As much as this is about her falling in love with someone, a lot of the movie really just feels centered around her and all of her individual quirks, her personality, and the fact that just because she is a romantic and she's falling in love with this person, she is going to get their attention and try to have them reciprocate through her own unique style of doing it and of socializing. It's a little hard to explain, I suppose, if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't, I highly recommend this movie. If you don't like subtitles, probably a bust for you. It is all in French. I think Audrey Tautou, if that's how you pronounce her name, is so captivating, so beautiful, and such a great actor. The next one that I want to talk about is called Mr. Nobody. This movie is a sci-fi, fantasy, very cinematic and existential kind of film from 2009. It has a pretty long runtime. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes, and it stars none other than Jared Leto. Jared Leto is one of those people that annoys me so much because he's so multi-talented and also incredibly attractive, and you can't have it all. Like, you gotta share, you know what I mean? He also has like kind of a strange culty vibe as a person. I just like kind of can't tell what's going on with him, but he's incredible in this movie, and this movie was incredibly influential for me growing up. I guess for a couple of these movies, I have tattoos that represent the movies, and one of them just kind of spoils it if I ever decided to do a tattoo tour, but I have this tattoo here, and this is a reference to this movie, my Way Out sign tattoo. And then, obviously, I have my yellow submarine here. So this movie revolves around this person, Nemo Nobody, and he is the last mortal on Earth. He is 118 years old, and most of this movie, you're watching him remember his life but because he is 118 years old and he's the last mortal, he gets very confused. Really what this movie does is it takes you through 3 different versions and then sort of subset versions of Nemo Nobody's life and all of the lives that he could have lived. So you're really not sure necessarily, or you're not meant to be sure, which one is the right life, which is the one you're actually supposed to be knowing to be truly lived. But that's kind of the point of the movie, and I don't really want to spoil it too much, but what this movie taught me, whether it was direct or inadvertently, it taught me to not put so much weight on those huge life decisions that get you so stressed and so anxious. Obviously, you need to be wise, you need to be thoughtful and careful, you need to think through your big life decisions, right? But when it's something that is slightly out of your control, or you're constantly using a what if scenario to decide which thing is the right thing to do, this movie just kind of taught me that there is no right thing. There is no right life to live. This is a very philosophical kind of discussion, a little bit existential, and I guess sort of shows my feelings a little bit on the concept of free will and destiny. But I just learned a lot from this because I'm a child of divorce. I have 2 incredible parents, but I've, because of that, faced numerous decisions in my young adult life or teenage life that were incredibly difficult to make at the time. And I think that this concept, getting to watch this person play out all of these different versions of their life, the people that they could have married, the ways in which they could have died, it just in a way really helped to provide me with that positive nihilism that maybe I never had experienced or thought about at the time. So yeah, this is a pretty constant rewatch for me. Now that I'm older and I've seen more movies, I know that there are definitely things about this movie that I don't love, but overall, I think it's a really fun, interesting journey, and I think it's absolutely worth the watch if you like psychological dramas, sci-fi, fantasy. And I'm gonna move on. The next one that I want to talk about is Babylon by Damien Chazelle. This is quite a newer movie. This came out in 2022. This one is without a doubt the longest one on the list, and I definitely would recommend it because, again, it's one of my favorite movies. It wouldn't be on here for no reason, but it is long. And I will say before anything, I think this movie is absolutely incredible, but I think it is too long, and I think that there is a good chunk of time, the runtime, that I would take out. A part of the third act I would just completely remove. I don't really know why it's there. But if you watch the movie, I will let you be the judge of that. So I was a really big fan of La La Land when that came out, and I did really like Whiplash too. I really like Damien Chazelle's work, but as soon as this movie came out, it totally replaced La La Land for me. The concept is actually very similar, and he is the kind of director that really shows what his biggest influences are, and he wants to pay homage to those influences, and I actually really like that about him. So La La Land and Babylon are actually quite similar, but Babylon is quite literally like a more R-rated version of a lot of the subject matter of La La Land. I think the acting is fantastic, the music is fantastic, the cinematography is absolutely insane in this movie, and I find it very compelling. I think that the pacing is really good for the most part, and I was so locked in for the entirety of this movie, and even though there's bits of it that I don't really like, it hasn't really destroyed the integrity of the movie for me. This movie is all about 1920s Hollywood, acting, directing, and making movies at the time, and it's all about the culture and the impact of celebrities at the time. So there's a lot of really wacky, depraved stuff going on, especially in the opening scenes. I think that the intro, not just the first act of this movie, but the first half hour is probably one of the most amazing that I've ever seen. And of course, you know, it's just my taste, right? This is subjective, but I can't not recommend it. So if it sounds like something you might like, if you like Damien Chazelle, if you really like old Hollywood 1920s aesthetics, this is a movie for you. And I'm not really sure why it got so snubbed. I think maybe because it was so long. I don't know why directors keep doing this. I mean, I really don't think it needed to be so long, but I get it, you know, do what you feel like you need to do as an artist, but I was really confused why this movie kind of flopped the way that it did. Okay, we're on to the next movie. Alice in Wonderland, the original animated Disney film, is another one that I absolutely need to mention, and I don't even know how many times I've rewatched this one. This animated Disney classic came out in 1951, and it goes without saying, this is one of the most influential storybooks of all time, and definitely this animated movie version too. This is just another one that I watched as a kid that absolutely blew me away. I was so enchanted by this movie, and it really just never left my brain. I think that the story of Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass was always so beautiful to me, and it's a classic. I mean, like, that's kind of really all you can say about something like this. Just like Red Riding Hood, all of those classic fairy tales, they all have so much character and they all have so much interesting storytelling. And this is what's so cool about adaptations, is I think that this animated adaptation was really, really good for what they were trying to do with it. It's definitely rated G. It's definitely very childlike. It's very accessible. I have also really liked the darker interpretations that I've seen from other filmmakers of this story, but this one I think really just kind of takes the cake. I think that the audio, there's something about that, you know, that old 50s audio that's just so enchanting. The way that the singers sing all of these tunes is so beautiful, and again, it's just aged really incredibly. The colors are magnificent, the creatures are so cool, and I can imagine what a challenge it must be to try to adapt this book. It's really, really complicated, and there's so many directions you can go with the designs of everything from the world to the characters. But yeah, honestly, like, there's not too much else to say about this one. It's really nice and short. It's only like an hour and 12 minutes, and it's beautiful. The next movie on my list is Swiss Army Man. This movie is from 2016, and this was directed by the brother-director duo, the Daniels. This was, if I'm not mistaken, their debut feature, and this is the movie that came before Everything Everywhere All at Once, which also is an incredible movie, but this one is a little bit more my speed. There is so much to love about this movie. Like, it's technically a comedy and fantasy. It's kind of dark, but it's also incredibly beautiful. This is one that you really can't describe unless you go and watch it for yourself, because surface level, this movie is a bunch of fart and poop jokes, but gorgeous. That sounds so insane when you say it out loud. And once again, this one, the soundtrack, absolutely incredible. This soundtrack actually, like, changed my life. It's probably in my top 5 favorite soundtracks of all time. The soundtrack and score was done by Andy Hall and Robert McDowell, and if you know the band Manchester Orchestra, Andy Hall is a member of that band, and once I made that connection after I watched this movie, I was blown away, because you can definitely tell the styles are very similar. Manchester Orchestra is very rock, but also very folk, and this soundtrack feels very folk. A lot of it's actually a cappella, and a lot of it, the main characters are also kind of singing in the movie. So it has a little bit of a musical vibe, but they're doing a lot of very abstract, simple singing, not really busting out into song, if that makes any sense. This movie is hilarious. The acting by Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe is insane. Paul Dano is definitely one of my favorite actors of all time. That's a different list. The visuals are incredible. And the concept. I think this movie is so strong because of its execution in its concept. This movie is about a man getting stranded on an island, but a dead body of a man in a suit washes up on the shore right as he's about to take his own life. And basically he discovers that this body may not be entirely dead. So it's a crazy concept. It's very dark, but also there's so much light within the dark of this movie. It's honestly everything to me. I've rewatched this a million times and I cannot recommend it more. Definitely a very out of the box one, but that's why it's so cool. The next one I want to mention is another that was super, super influential to me growing up, and it's another Beatles movie, or Beatles-inspired movie. It is Across the Universe from 2007. This one is a drama, a little bit of a comedy, most definitely at its heart a musical, and this movie was directed by Julie Taymor. This movie was my favorite movie of all time for many, many years. When this came out, I was so blown away by how much I loved it, and by all of the arrangements and sort of covers of these original Beatles songs that I love the originals of too. I remember that this movie really did not do very well, and a lot of people also didn't really like it, and I had a really hard time understanding that because I thought I was gonna hate it too. When you're a hardcore Beatles fan, it's really difficult to imagine a musical movie being created with Beatles music and having that sound like a good idea. And man, I really was just so blown away by this. And you know, this is another one that the more I've aged and the more that I've rewatched it, I've definitely have issues with the movie that came to the surface as I became more of like a film lover. And yeah, there are definitely things I would change about this movie, and I could definitely understand why people didn't really like it at the time. But at its core, I still really have so much love for this movie. I think it was so ambitious, and honestly, I don't know, I just think it could have been so much worse, as much as that's not really supposed to be the way that you frame this discussion. I think that the arrangements of these covers are really well crafted and really beautiful. Just like with any musical movie, you definitely can tell that the actors are not singing live, and that some of them very likely aren't very good singers to begin with. A lot of the vocals feel really in your face mix-wise, and they feel very extra tuned. But there's something about a lot of the way that these actors went about these parts that I actually really like. I think the direction was really good in a lot of senses. I think Julie Taymor did a really good job with, again, something that was incredibly ambitious to start with. To try to craft a story and a narrative around a lot of these songs to make them make sense together, it's really challenging, especially because the Beatles have so much work. There were lots of little Easter eggs all over the movie that I loved as a Beatles fan. Every single character is named after a Beatles song. It's little stuff like that. There's lots of times in the movie where the dialogue is actually just referencing or outright saying another Beatles song, or a fact or tidbit about one of the actual members of the Beatles' lives. So yeah, I do recommend this movie. I would say to give it a chance if you haven't seen it. And also, if you did see this movie and this movie wasn't your vibe, if you're A, not a Beatles fan at all, or B, you're a big Beatles fan and you hated the way that they covered this music, I totally get it. Like, this movie has a lot of nostalgic value for me, and I can definitely see that now, being a 26-year-old. Okay, and it's time for the embarrassing movie of the list. I shouldn't say embarrassing, but it's the chick flick. Pride and Prejudice from 2005. This movie is based on the Jane Austen novel, and it was directed by Joe Wright. And it starred Keira Knightley, as well as a lot of other familiar faces that ended up definitely garnering a lot more fame and taking on bigger roles later on in their careers. This movie is great. I will not take any slander, okay? Just because this is a period movie and it's a romance does not mean that it's not great. If you're not into romance movies, I totally get it. You can just skip this one if you want, but I think this is one of the best written movies. I think the screenplay is really good. I think the pacing is incredible, and I think that the acting is really good. It's also beautiful. Like, the cinematography, the locations that they filmed in this movie were just so awe-inspiring. Like, makes you want to pick up and get to Europe immediately. Again, the score of this one too, incredible. There isn't even that much score, but the themes, especially like the main title theme, oh my god. This was a movie that my mom loved, that she would watch over and over again, and as a kid, I would always just scoff at it and be like, Mom, this is so boring, and I'd fall asleep. And then what do you know? Puberty hits, my mom's watching it again, I finally sit my ass down to watch it, and I just pay attention and give it a chance. I'm bawling my eyes out. All of a sudden, this is actually such an incredible movie, and I can't believe that I just never gave it the chance before. I will say, I haven't read the original novel. I've said this before, but I'm a pretty bad reader. There's a number of movies that are my favorite movies that are adaptations of novels, and I haven't read the original books, which, yes, doesn't really feel great, and I definitely would like to change that and keep trying to read the original stories as they were intended. But film and TV is the medium for me. This is just what I enjoy. I enjoy watching much more than I do reading. But the times that I have read the original source material, I haven't regretted it. So I think I could do it with this one too. Anyway, love this one. That's all I have to say about it. The next one on the list is going to be A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick. This came out in 1971. I'm a pretty big fan of Kubrick's other movies as well, but this one probably has to be my favorite. This one is also based on a novel, and I haven't read it, so sorry. I think that a movie really can shine when it's narrated by someone very, very despicable. You kind of cringe at everything that they're saying and what they end up doing, and it ends up feeling very helpless as a reader or a watcher to see it play out and kind of be stuck in the mindset of the narrator. It's a really, really messed up movie, but I personally love the psychological element of it. It technically is like a crime film, kind of sci-fi, but there is so much about it that makes you constantly think and feel just confused. Who are you supposed to be rooting for? Who are you supposed to be upset with? This is definitely one of the best films that's ever been made when it comes to giving yourself a mental test when it comes to your own personal morality and also the morality of society. There are so many really important questions being asked. I really, really like the way that they go about it. I think that the plot is very unpredictable and very, very emotional at times. There are a lot of really graphic scenes in this movie, so if you're not a violence person or you get triggered by depictions of certain things, this is definitely not the movie for you, but I think that the rawness of this movie is really part of what makes it so incredible. Also, the score, absolutely insane, was also historical in the sense that Wendy Carlos composed the score, and she was one of the most important woman figures in not only music history, but the history of synthesizers and synth development. Also, Malcolm McDowell's performance as the lead in this is really so insane. Definitely one of the best performances I've seen in a movie ever. You just feel so incredibly sorry for him, but you hate him all at the same time. It's really very interesting. And for the last movie of the list, we're gonna bring it back to some animation and bring it full circle here. The last one on my top 10 is gonna have to be Coraline. This is a stop-motion claymation film from 2009. This one was directed by Henry Selick, also an adaptation of the novel by Neil Gaiman, and this one I have read. Still, I prefer watching the movie, I think, to the novel. It was so brilliant to adapt this story into a claymation art style. The story is so scary and nightmarish and at the same time very, very heartwarming. And I think that one of the mediums that captures that feeling so well is claymation. This is definitely the star on the list when it comes to voice acting performances as well. I think Dakota Fanning and Terry Hatcher did such an incredible job at bringing these characters to life. Everybody did, honestly. The cat, Keith David. This is one of those movies that kids, when they watched it, were kind of traumatized by. I was a little traumatized, but in the way that I was kind of forever changed. I couldn't believe that a movie could be this artful and this expansive when it came to the world building. And the concept is just off the charts. It's so, so cool. As a child, I was super imaginative and I was always coming up with these different stories and different, things that I could act out with my friends. And the idea of a little trap door, this miniature door in this new glum house that I just moved into, to this new place where I have no friends, the idea of a whole other alternate world or universe course, being on the other side of that door, that just made my head explode as a kid. I loved it so much. And once again, huge shout out to the score of this movie. The score is by Bruno Kules. Again, not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but literally off the charts. There are some choral arrangements in this score that are so delicate and so eerie. The recordings are just so masterfully done. And shout out to the kids choir. Okay, well, there you have it. I think I did a sufficient amount of talking my ass off about these movies. I am gonna get into my honorable mentions before we wrap up. And again, like, not only is this whole list and the movies that I'm mentioning like subject to change, but I know for a fact that there are going to be movies that I think about later that I'm so mad I didn't mention. All right, so we're gonna start off with a couple more animated films, starting off strong with Ratatouille. This one I wanted to put in the top 10 so bad, but that and Coraline, they couldn't compete with each other. Masterpiece, and I don't think anyone would disagree with me about this movie. WALL-E, so ahead of its time, devastating story, but so cute and so beautifully done. Spirited Away, obviously I needed to mention a Miyazaki movie here. As much as this is probably the one that most people say is their favorite, it does take the cake for me. This is the one that I watched first when I was a kid, and the one that had the most impact on me. Story-wise, I really like how fast-paced and kind of scary and creative this one is. Shrek, both 1 and 2, just recently rewatched these movies, and incredible. Like, they hold up so well that it's like scary. So funny, like laughing my ass off, like just the way I was, probably more actually than I was when I was a kid first watching these. Wallace and Gromit. Really, pretty much anything Wallace and Gromit. I've seen all of the movies and like short episodes, but definitely the first 3 adventures that came out. My dad loves Wallace and Gromit and showed those to me as a kid. Had to shout them out. And then 2 mentions for Guillermo del Toro movies, The Shape of Water and Pan's Labyrinth. He's one of my favorite directors. He's definitely my favorite like creature designer, creator. I was so blown away by both of these movies. They're so different from each other, but you can tell they're done by the same person. Such unique stories and such love and care put into these creature designs. They're clearly not just monsters to him, they are like ethereal beings, and I just love it so much. Next one is About Time. This is a really funny, heartfelt, and brutally sad time travel movie that I think is really just kind of not your average time travel movie. It does a really, really good job of making it feel like the movie isn't really about time travel. Time travel is just sort of the medium they use to tell a good story. The Grand Budapest Hotel. I needed to mention a Wes Anderson movie because I love him, but this one is definitely my favorite of his. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This is going to be the Ben Stiller movie version. Once again, incredible life lessons and incredible locations. It's just a movie that will make you want to get out there and travel and live your life no matter how stressed you are at the time. The Florida Project. This is my favorite movie of Sean Baker's, whose film Anora just swept at the Oscars. I liked Anora, but The Florida Project is definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen. Again, yeah, this one is incredibly sad, but so beautiful, so incredibly shot, and a testament to how important it can be and how effective it can be to not always use real actors as your lead actors in your films. And a Christopher Nolan mention, I have to mention The Dark Knight. I used to be a pretty big Nolan fan. I definitely still am to an extent, but The Dark Knight definitely was really impactful for me. Batman was really the comic book hero that I loved as a kid because I was like pretty edgy, and I loved the Joker, and there was just no beating this performance. I think that the dialogue in this movie is really well written, and score is incredible, and the acting is just like some of the best I've ever seen. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. I saw these, probably just like you guys, at way too young an age. Left a huge impression on me. These movies are absolutely crazy. They do not at all seem like they were filmed in the early 2000s. They look just as good now, if not even better than a lot of the fantasy movies that have come after it. The makeup, the sets, the costumes are just off of the charts in these movies. everything. That's my big nerdy shout out for the video. Like, these movies are irreplaceable. And for my last couple, they are horror movies because I'm a pretty big fan of horror. I feel like it's a very misunderstood genre, and there's actually so many great horror movies out there, but it's very easy to dismiss horror like as a genre because there are also a lot of really bad horror movies. So another Kubrick one, I'm gonna say The Shining. The Shining is one of my favorite movies ever, and definitely one of my favorite horror movies. That's another one that I think can speak for itself. It's awesome in every way. And then I have Ari Aster's Hereditary. This movie boggled my mind when I watched it, and I really wasn't even sure if I liked it. Just kept rewatching and wanting to rewatch it, and here we are. Call it more of a psychological drama really than a horror, but it does get very, very horror in the final act. And also made me start loving one of my like newer favorite musicians, Colin Stetson. He definitely helped make this movie as impactful and disturbing as it is with his score. And the last one on my list is Suspiria. You might hate me if you know Suspiria, but I am talking about the 2018 remake of Suspiria and not the original, though I do also love the original Dario Argento movie. They're incredibly different in my opinion. It was also scored by Tom York, who is like in my top 5 favorite musicians ever, so he really brought the movie to life for me. And this is definitely my favorite Luca Guadagnino film. This is another one that when I first watched it, I thought that I hated it because I took an edible, and I should not have done that. To go see this movie with my friends. I was so scared out of my mind that I thought that I hated the movie, and I came out being like, did everyone hate that as much as I did? And they were like, nah, dude, that was pretty good. And I was like, okay, gotta rethink my life. But yeah, lo and behold, I went to rewatch this movie another time, and then it turned into multiple rewatches, and I realized it was like weirdly a comfort movie. And for some reason, even though it's a really, really disturbing story with a lot of really gory visuals, I love it. Ugh. I know this is gonna be a long video, and seriously, I just need to thank you so much for letting me go on and ramble about these movies. I really would love to hear what you guys think about this list. I'd love to know if you have any of them in common with me, and I'd also love for you to give me your own like little lists of you know, maybe your top 5, top 10 favorite movies. I'd love to you know, indulge myself in more rewatches or maybe find films that I haven't seen based on your lists. And I know there are a lot of classics that I still have yet to see, so I look forward to reading you guys' comments. I'm so inspired by this medium, and I take it so much more seriously now than I used to. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you want to see more like this, once again, please let me know. There are always plenty of artistic lists that we can talk about, things that we can come up with, so I'm super game for any of it. Thanks again for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.